announcement about it. But yeah, we've got another one on the way. And this one's going to be in a slightly new region, new state. So
I would say that's a win.
Yeah, that's a win.
Right?
It's not a full announcement.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Who else?
Oh, I've got one. I know I was talking really fast when I was describing the situation I'm in because it's a bit complex. With one of our customers who's trying to negotiate us into exclusivity because they want to take us out of the market. I think honestly they want to acquire us. So the first thing I did to build our leverage in that talk was to gain an intro to their top competitor and start making a sale. And I had the demo yesterday, or not demo, but I had the initial intro conversation with them yesterday, and they're extremely interested. So not only that will improve our leverage for these conversations, but the price point at which they want to purchase it may almost double our revenue. So we're a small company, and so I think if we made that sale, we'd immediately be able to start hiring.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, applause all the way around. That's it's kind of the whole concept of wins kind of goes in with our conversation today in chapter 4, right? And it hopefully everybody's familiarized yourself with chapter 4. However, got a couple things I want to hit on today that they've been kind of percolating, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to put it out here. So we might switch from script a little bit, as they say, go off script. But before I do, I'm curious. I gave a challenge out there last week at the end of the call, and I'm just curious if anybody spent their week writing down their wants on a daily basis or periodically. Okay, Simone, tell us a little bit about that experience.
It was interesting because my wants are all really how do I articulate this? It's really emotional more than it's, I want this thing to happen or that thing to happen. It was more I'll have to just go back and look.
Well, here's what I'm curious. One of the things I'm interested to find out is, did your number of wants refine over the week as you were writing, from, let's say, Wednesday of last week to Tuesday yesterday?
No, I think they went bigger, quite frankly. Simply because, what I want is, more moments, it kind of does go with, I think, what I read for next week, but more moments in which to enjoy certain things, more comfortable moments where the things that I feel hold me back, that I get past that. That's kind of what my wants were more about. Being aware of the needs of my team, that kind of thing, rather than I want, $10 million a year or something like that.
Right. Okay. Well, and I appreciate you sharing, because I think that's the whole exercise, right? Is to make this a habit for thinking purposes. Like, the thing that comes to my mind, and guys chime in, but when I hear you say that, Simone, the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, Simone, why is that important?
Yes.
Right. Kind of that. And I think that what I find is the more time I spend on a regular basis just going, look, this is what I want, right? And I tend to think in the 4 freedoms, right?
Yeah.
Financially, look, we're human, right? Like, we have objectives. So with my relationships and purpose, why do I want these things? But it tends to bring a little clarity into, the thing of it is if you want those moments, Simone, then the question is, where do you need to be in those, in the steps to get you there? And is there anybody else that you need to bring into the picture to make what you want happen, right? And that's the whole purpose of that thing, is just to bring clarity to what's inside of you. Because here's what I believe. Each one of you, all of us inside, we have this thing, but we're afraid to say it. We're afraid to, right? We're afraid to say it because, oh, it seems unrealistic, or it's hard, or people will make fun of me, or whatever. And remember, wanting is without any need to defend yourself, right? You just want it because you want it, right? And it's the thinking that goes along with that. Well,
I would say, Rick, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I
Yeah,
would
no, go
say
ahead.
that it did help me clarify some things. It did help me, I'm pretty much accepting what this new identity what I want it to be. And so a lot of my wants are about that, about getting to that new identity, using that unique ability, because I think I'm figuring that out too.
fantastic. Well, I want to shift. I want to pivot a little bit, and I want to share. A question that I received this week, and I'm going to leave the person anonymous. But the reason I want to share it is, I think it may be a question that more than one person has, or that we all have. And I'm just going to read this to you, so I get it out. And here's what was sent to me. It says, "Hey Rick, we are all business owners, entrepreneurs, etc. But my aha moment was in realizing first I'm a spouse, a parent, etc. After that, I'm a business owner and a servant to our clients. It kind of comes forth for me, even if we don't sometimes get it in that order, right?" And it's interesting to me. And I first of all, I'm grateful that you guys would share this kind of stuff, because this is what I want to share on the calls. Like, we've got to bring this out. That's the reason community is so important. And the courage to share is invaluable. So I felt it was meaningful enough that I wanted to share it with the group. And I want to throw it out to discussion. Who agrees with the comment? Who has anything that they would add? What do you think of when you hear that comment? So I'm just curious. I want to spend a little time this morning, see if we can just visit on that topic. It's cricket. So here's my question then. How many of you agree? So this is what immediately resonated with me. I think of life in the 4 boxes of freedom, right? I'm a deep American. I'm all about freedom. These things matter to me. But then I got thinking about the whole conversation last week with abundance and scarcity, right? And then I think about the 4 C's: commitment and courage, right? And having to build capabilities. Those things build confidence. All these things really come to the forefront. But the first half of this book is everything to do with the mental part of this game. Okay. And the reality is, look, it's not perfection. And I think that's the thing as business owners, it limits us, and we make mistakes sometimes thinking we have to do it perfect. What we have to do is just think about what we want, right? So if my relationships are first and foremost, that's fantastic. But it doesn't mean that your financial, it doesn't mean that your purpose, it doesn't mean that your time has to sacrifice. In an abundant mind frame, you can be doing really well in all these things. And so I thought about my life, for example. I got up this morning at 4 o'clock. Why? I know that I need a little bit of time in the morning just to reflect, have a cup of coffee. I like to be on the back porch. You know, I get a little prayer time. I get to think about things. I got up and went for a walk, right? I didn't get a good workout in today because I was short on time, but I got out there and did a 20-minute walk. I'm able to do those things. I come to work. I love what I do. When I'm with clients, when I'm with you guys, like, it fills me up, right? And part of that purpose that we've talked about. But here's what I've found. And we've all had times in the past when I was just focused on work, for example, without really understanding what I wanted, right? I was always on task, always doing something. It never left me. But what I find is I put things in different contexts in this model. When I'm with my family, when I'm with my kids, when I'm with my friends, I'm there in the moment, right? I'm not thinking about, hey, the client meeting that I got tomorrow, because guess what? When I was preparing for it, I delegated what I needed to. I got done what needed to be done by me, and I'm prepared ahead of time. So my point in that is that's where we have to be the better versions of ourselves, and we have to be able to shed the 80%, right? Because if we're playing, in my view, when we're playing in the 80%, it tends to get us thinking scarcity, going, well, I'm not going to sacrifice my family for my business. But I'm going to tell you, I dropped my daughter off at Ole Miss last week, and I'm going to tell you, you know what hit me? Like, first of all, I'm a little sad, but I'm very excited. But what I realized is, man, I better up my game, right? Like, I don't know why, but I just like was overcome with this. I need to really put the pedal down, right? And it's not just the financial, but I want I'm fortunate. I don't have college expense for her, okay? But what I do have is I want to be in Oxford. I want to go see my child. I want to go be there for a couple games. I want to do those things, right? So I've got to make sure. That's what hit me is like all this matters, right? What we're doing and it kind of energizes. So that's my viewpoint. That's kind of what was boiling up in me a little bit as I thought about this. And I'm like, let's not think in scarcity. When we think we're sacrificing one for another, I think the real question is, are we thinking scarcity or we're thinking, I don't want to work that hard, right? Because it takes work, right? And I think just like procrastination might be a signal that we shouldn't be doing something. I wonder if, if we think about these things in this context, are we truly playing in our unique ability? Is this a signal that maybe we're not, right? So anyway, that's kind of my view on it. I'm just curious. Throw it out.
Well, no, I just want to say thanks for framing it that way, because, in that when Simone was talking about the wanting what I want and feeling, and you were talking about not, one of the people having to defend it. Yeah, I think a lot of times that's where maybe I want something work related, I work something family related. I start getting into this defense mode because I'm thinking scarcity. Like there's not enough for me to reach my goals personally, financially, business wise. Like there's not enough because I'm in that 80%. And so I should appreciate you sharing that, because it kind of like I want what I want and it's not limited. I don't have to pick business over family or family over business. I can just want all of those things.
So and that's the point. So I even think about it like this. It gets me thinking about, if I like getting up early, I don't defend that anymore. I used to feel bad about that. I'm like, I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning. People think I'm nuts, but you know what? It's important. It's what I want. It fulfills me on a different level. That means I'm in bed by 9:30. You're not going to don't call me at 10:30. You're not going to get me. Don't text me. You're not going to get a response. You respond. My brother called me this morning at 5 o'clock. He was going to the airport and he said, you're one of the only people I know that will be up. And that it's funny, but I get up, but then that gets you thinking about, well, what am I putting in my body? Right. Because I need nutrition. I need to fuel this thing. And that's the challenge. You have to shed your own old identity. Right. And I think we grind and because success is just work. That's that 2X, right? This is all about 10X. And so remember, there's no time constraint on you hitting the 10x visions that you have, right? But if you want, that's what I'm kind of rediscovering is, man, all these things just kind of naturally cascade onto each other, right? And so yeah, but I think you have to get the mental, and I'll be honest with you, maybe not everybody has that desire. That's the hardest thing for somebody like me to understand is maybe they don't. But I want to share one more story with you if I can. So I have a buddy, a really good buddy. He does medical sales, and you know what? He's done the management thing. He's not interested in all those complexities. But you know what? He masters his craft and his value proposition. I thought about it. You know, I thought like, what's his unique ability? First of all, the guy does not mind driving. He'll do. I've talked to him on a day when he's driven to Fort Worth and back twice for medical cases, right? I mean, it just doesn't bother him. He enjoys it, book on tape, whatever. But he has created value for the doctors he works with. They want him in those cases, and he's well compensated for it. But guess what? He works out every day. He runs every day. He mows his own lawn. He cooks dinner for the family. He takes his girls camping. Like you see where I'm going? Like his purpose is different. It's not the business owner or entrepreneurial purpose, but it's a purpose. And we need those people. We need to help, kind of that leadership thing. How are we developing the people around us? How are we helping? Maybe they don't want, being a business owner is challenging, right? And you can find those 4 freedoms I always tell my son, when you're like down and in a bad mood, start thinking about how to help other people, right? Because when you do that, when you help other people be successful, all of a sudden you don't have time to feel pity party or woe is me or whatever the case may be. And I think that's what, kind of my friend, he kind of reflects in my mind that whole image of somebody that maybe doesn't want to be a business owner, but has still found all those boxes, right? And a way to balance them all out. So questions, comments, agree?
The balance of everything is something that I'm struggling with too, because if you don't know, we have 4 kids in everybody. We have 4 kids and we are 10 weeks out from identical twin girls.
Oh.
So we go 4 to 6. We have 2 businesses that we operate. We have a 4th franchise or another franchise that we're going to be awarding soon. We have an incredibly complicated historic preservation company that I love, but it's an old identity that I want to still kind of do like this much of, but only enough to like cover the bills and just do passion stuff. And then with a growing family, it's a lot to like, I feel like I'm stuck in the 80% of all 3 of them and having a difficult time getting out of that.
Yeah. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right? That's the thing is give yourself, and again, I think this is a great topic for, and I'm grateful that it came up when it did, because I think it helps bridge the gap between, no pun intended, bridges the gap between the first part of the book and the second. And we have to understand that, again, it's not perfection, right? But if you're truly, Marilyn and I were talking about this morning, purpose is the most important of the 4 freedoms. And when we figure purpose and we figure out what our unique ability is in that purpose, right? Then let's just recap. 80% of our activities are not what we're supposed to be doing. We've got to find the 20%. And then honestly, like that's where we need to 10x our activity, right? Everything else is who or how do we get rid of it? Delegation, delegation, automation, elimination. So whether it's, me, guess what? I'm not watching TV. I don't have time for it, right? Or if I do, it's Ted Lasso for a show with my wife because we enjoy it, right? But there's so much other going on that I have to eliminate all the stuff that really doesn't matter. You know, and I even think about, and I'm not a big drinker, but you know what? I don't necessarily want to have that beer because I got to get up and run, you know, or I got to get up and work out, or it's just not important to me in the category of things. And it's as much an exercise of where you're spending your time and being willing to be honest with yourself and then figuring out, hey, I got to find a way to get this off my plate. And it goes back to, you know, if you're feeling stuck and going, look, I'm sacrificing one for another, then the question, you know, just the challenge is, well, are you playing in that 80%, right? Because again, what came out as I was thinking about it is when we're playing in our unique ability, we have balance. We tend to have the balance, okay? And so just like procrastination to me is kind of a signal that we shouldn't be doing whatever we're doing or whatever's in front of us that we don't want to do, obviously, is when we start to think about balance and if we're challenged by it, are we signaling that maybe we're not playing in our unique ability? Is that possible? Okay. All right. Well, how about that for a kickoff this morning, huh? Again, thank you for the person brave enough to come forward and share that. I do appreciate that. All right, let's do a quick chapter 3 recap. So we talked about the difference between wants and needs, right? Anybody want to kind of give their 2 cents on the difference between wants and needs? Okay.
You're talking about describing them, like what they are,
Well,
or
yeah. How do you know the difference between the two? And obviously, it's kind of a no-brainer as to what we should be thinking about. But Luke, when you think of wants and needs, what comes to your mind?
one of the things that one thing that stuck me out to me in the book was one of the things that somebody else might ask you to justify. It may be something that somebody else doesn't want that you want because that's part of who you are. It's more maybe identity central even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you know, when we think about wants and needs, think about, again, and I highly recommend, if you haven't read the book on abundance, go get your copy. Peter Diamandis. It's a fabulous book. It's scary because the first thing you want to do is go, no, that's not possible. And that's the whole point of the book, right? Is, boy, do we limit ourselves. But abundance and scarcity to me is just an example of wants and needs, right? Wants are, hey, there's enough for anybody can have this piece of the pie. There's unlimited amounts. There's an infinity pie versus 16 slices, right? And if I get one, that means somebody else didn't get one. Right, that's kind of the difference of needs and wants, and it kind of goes back to the 4 freedoms, right? One doesn't have to sacrifice for the other to win too, right? We can figure out how that happens. Wealth, I think everybody understands. One of the things we talked about last week was the difference between wealth and money, right? Anybody given any thought to that deeper than what we talked about last week? We got a pretty good understanding.
I love that he had the Paul Graham essays in there, by the way. Paul Graham is definitely one of I love Paul Graham and his essays. Yeah.
Good. All right. And then, you know, I think as we think of unique ability, anybody have an epiphany, anybody making any progress on really defining what their unique ability is, willing to share with the group today?
I haven't.
You don't have? You haven't?
I have not.
Okay. Don't be afraid to share, because here's the thing.
I
Remember,
will.
go ahead, Simone.
Hard to articulate. So the more opportunities I get to articulate it, other than just writing it down in a journal. My unique ability is related to my ability to sort through a lot of details really fast and get to the core of an issue, and then to help somebody figure it out.
Okay, that's excellent. So just out of curiosity, like how did How did you come to that conclusion?
I really realized that it's what I've been doing for 30 years as a lawyer, but not all lawyers are very good at it. And so I have coached other lawyers at it for a long time. And so one of the things that I've been working on for the past 9 years, it seems, is an MBA. You know, once I started my law firm, it's like that's all I'm doing. And being able to be in an environment where there's not a lot of literature on how lawyers run law firms. Or because we go to law school to be a lawyer. They don't teach you to run a business. And so I have just, soaked up all the business literature as much as I could get, and then applied it to what I do. And so that ability to really see the application of an unrelated idea into the ideas that I do on a daily basis, it forms part of this unique ability. So say, for instance, I've been doing it with the lawyers who work with me because they'll come to me and, the main thing I do is help them to see past all the little weeds to what the big picture is, where we need to focus our case, where we need to create a narrative out of, where, I could spend a whole lot of money on discovery in one area that is really irrelevant to what my narrative is and where I'm going. So I've really honed that skill. And so thinking of that as my unique ability and thinking of what my 10X is, I have honed from all the stuff I've read, from time I've spent with you and these guys, to figure out how does, the structure of a law firm, how can you run a law firm more efficiently? How can you run a law firm where the intellectual property of the entrepreneur has been handed down to other people? That whole delegate, automate, eliminate kind of forces you into that. So in short, in recognizing that ability of me to really see past all the little things that are non-issues, to really isolate what the big issue is, I think that I can take that to other lawyers who are starting their own firm, introduce them to the idea that they are actually an entrepreneur now, they are no longer a lawyer, and to really guide them through and to help them see where their issue might really be and move on from there.
I love it. And thank you for sharing, Simone. What I hear when you're talking about this is there's a need to create a tool or tools.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because ultimately that's what you're good at is sharing that and teaching that process, and that becomes a product, and that's something much
and
later
I have
on.
the product.
Yeah.
I did that for myself, and so I'm going to write a book about it, and then I've had I think it's interesting the way the universe starts screaming at you, but I will probably enroll in September in a business coach certification program. So because I'm of the ilk that I think I have to be certified. That's for me. I know there are people who would hire me without that, but that's me. I just feel that that's, kind of having a JD behind my name says one thing, but being certified in something says another.
I'd go one more step to give you a little more credit.
Yes.
When you create value, you will attract buyer. You are the buyer, not the seller, right?
Exactly.
And so the certifications, the training is part of mastery, right? And that's the thing with unique ability. And that was one of the things we talked about last week, is once you kind of figure that out, then it's really mastering your unique ability, right? Because it's great to be trusted, but if you can't execute on an objective, if you can't get to where you need to be, you're not gonna, people aren't gonna follow you, right? They can like you, they're not gonna do business with you. Remember this couple things: unique abilities according to Dan, you can have 2 or 3. But if you have gotten into the thing going, well, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, and this, and now you got 7, 8, 10 unique abilities, the reality is over time, you'll end up shedding all but about 2 or 3 as you really refine that. But I think it's brainstorming. If you're stuck, remember, the greatest thing is to ask questions and listen to your coworkers, listen to your clientele, right? Listen to your family. They may be wrong, but it's going to help you narrow down and get zoned in on where your unique abilities are. And that's the key. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, that's interesting to bring that up. Ask, I had a phone meeting with a potential new client about a week ago, and we're talking about, through just learning about his business and kind of some things that he was looking to do and grow and services that I could provide. And I found myself, usually I'm selling like, hey, this is what we do. This is what we can do. And it came to me even before we really got to this in the book, but I said, well, what are you looking for? What do you need? And so he shared that, and it was kind of eye-opening. Several of the things he wanted and priorities were a little bit different than other businesses that I've seen, and it was refreshing. And so seeing what he was saying, this is what I'm looking for, helped me hone in more on partially my unique ability, partially what this segment of the consulting piece that I'm building up. And anyway, it was refreshing to see that, again, I wasn't being the seller, but I was being the buyer of let me understand what you need and how to fulfill that. So anyway, that was a little bit of an aha moment there for me.
Well, congratulations. That's fantastic. And it changes the whole dynamic, doesn't it? It's like you want to make sure that they're a good fit for you, not just a one-way street, right? So fantastic. Well, that's good. That's a good application. If you're struggling, remember, start asking, start listening. Be honest with yourself. But I think, like I said, I'm going to harp on this because it's between the ears too. If you can't be honest with yourself, if we can't be honest with ourselves, we're not going to make the progress. And it's that deep side, inside of us is that little thing. And we put the governor on it, go, oh, I can't do this because what would people think, or what would my family think, or my peers, or my partner, or whatever. And that's a good signal that you're not in your unique ability, right? And that's a scarcity thing, by the way, right? As we've said before on prior calls, at the end of the day, none of it matters, right? And you can take that one of 2 ways. That is not a get out of jail free card. That is not go do whatever because it doesn't matter. It is do what you want to do, what you think you're doing, that purpose and those things, because it doesn't matter, right? It's like my daughter, she's calling this week because now it's this whole recruitment thing, sorority thing. I know nothing about it. That wasn't my path in life, but she gets comments, and I just have to tell her, look, don't worry about what people are saying, commenting on. Do your thing, right? Go be who you are, and that's what none of the other stuff really matters, right? And I think we've got to embrace that in a good, positive way, not the dark, negative way, but in the positive way. So,
Rick,
let's
can I
see.
just, I wanted to circle back to something. One of the assignments you gave us last week was asking people why they work with you.
Yes.
And I just wanted to suggest, I won't go through it, but I just wanted to suggest, if you're still searching, that helped me. I asked people who work for me that question, and it helped.
So, okay. So Simone, you opened the door. So it helped. Share an example or 2 of some comments that you received.
Well, now that you guys kind of know where I'm headed on that unique ability, how I'm kind of refining that, I asked Jacob, almost at 14 years, why do you work with me? And he said, because I saw something in him he did not see in himself. And I gave him opportunities. I gave him, the opportunity. I'm trying to read my notes here. But I genuinely believed he could grow financially. I genuinely believed that he could grow professionally, and I gave him tools to help him do that.
Wow. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah,
Simone, what I wondered is, as you were asking the question, did you get a little uncomfortable?
absolutely. And there were certain people I didn't want to ask the question to, you know. I'm not going to ask my daughter Delaney why she works for me.
You might know the answer to that.
I might know the answer because you paid my bills.
Simone, that's a powerful talent you have, though. I know through my career, somebody saw something in me 30 years ago that I didn't see.
Yeah.
So for you to be able to see that in others is life-changing, career-changing.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes.
And I think that if I can help other people, because, you know, the idea, the tool, I have created a tool that will work. I've seen it work. And to be able to give that to other people, and then to be able to hands-on help them, you know. I think what Jacob said to me in particular really told me that skill is totally transferable and it can be elevated.
Well, in that part of, if we're going to have some who's in our life, some of those who's are from different fields, right? So I don't want to be the tech guy. I want to know who the tech people are, and I want to bring them in. But if I'm going to get away from doing the administrative, the operational stuff, then not only do we need to identify those people, but we have to grow them. You know, when you hire them, you see something in them, right? I mean, or otherwise you're just hiring to check off the list, which is a leadership fail, right? If we've ever hired and it hasn't worked out, we can typically go back to, well, I was filling the box, right? But when we hire somebody because we see them in a bigger opportunity, a bigger future, then as leaders, what are we doing to grow that who, or that stable of who's? And that's a very interesting thing, because not only, well, it goes back to leadership, right? And if we're going to be entrepreneurs, if we're going to be bigger than just a solo entrepreneur, and we're going to have people around us, we have to give some thought. And maybe, by the way, maybe that's not in our unique ability. So maybe we have to find some help on ways to do that. And I think Simone offers up some pretty good solutions. So I think that's a good topic. And Simone, I appreciate you opening up on that. Anybody else brave enough to have some conversations with folks about why they do business with you, or why they work with you, etc.?
So I actually just did this. I've been struggling with identifying my unique ability. I had some underlying thoughts to it, but couldn't really, I guess I was fighting it. And while Simone was talking and suggested, and the suggestion of reaching out to those who work with you, I had the thought of who knows me better than my wife. And so I just shot my wife a text message, and I was like, I'm struggling with this. What do you think? And you said your unique ability might be 3 to 4 things. She shot back 4 things that were spot on, which were exactly what I'd been fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, if she sees it, then this is what everybody else sees, and like I don't have to continue to fight this. So that was like 3 minutes ago.
So the word fight is an interesting thing. I don't think anybody on this call is what I would call arrogant or egomaniac, right? So as as entrepreneurs that really have a heart for serving people in the ways we do, and we do it in all sorts of ways. Sometimes we feel bad about being honest about what we think our unique ability is, right? Like, it's there, guys. It's in you. You know what it is, but you're afraid to say it. That's why the exercise of asking those around you who, by the way, are your raging fans, right? If your clients do business with you, they want to see Mark Lambert be successful. They want to see Jeff be successful, right? That's why they're voting with their business to go, Luke, you're my guy. We're supporting you. You know, Lexi, we want to see you guys thrive, right? What better opportunity to ask these people? And it just confirms, like, to your point, what it does is go, okay, I just needed to hear that, right? I was kind of suspicious, thinking that might be it, but I hope that makes sense. Well, congratulations. Breakthrough, you know, the day is done. What can we say? Fantastic. Anybody have any other comments over chapter 3? Anything they're struggling with still, or just an observation or comment?
I've got one question. Can the unique ability change over the course of your lifetime? I remember reading the chapter and it felt like it was supposed to be something central and something more like lifetime but it sounded like when you were talking earlier that you implied that maybe the unique ability could morph or change over time as a part of growth. Yep. Is that true?
Yes. I mean, okay. So Luke, I did not plant that question. That's a great question. So let's go back to let's dig into chapter 4 a little bit, and let's think about unique ability, right? Because at the end of the day, who here in their 20s made less than $40,000, right? So who in their 40s made more than $100,000, right? Right.
I'm not 40 yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. But you see what the point I'm trying to make is the unique ability you had in your 20s changed or refined or got better or whatever, right? Like, it's not the same unique ability that you had in your 20s when you're 40 or you're 30 or you're 50 or you're 60, right? So it can change, and it's part of your growth, and it's part of your 10x, by the way. It's part of you wanting what you want in your 20s. Do we really know what we want in our 20s, right? And for some of us, it takes longer. So you understand where I'm going at. Your unique ability is going to change as you change. Hopefully you grow, right? Like that purpose. And Marilyn and I were talking again about this this morning. The most important of the 4 freedoms is purpose. And it's interesting to me. I'm a big purpose guy. I like the whole why, right? Because it's more than just money. It's wealth, right? When you figure out what that is, that's how you create wealth. But I don't always sense that that everybody in this world understands purpose or gives much credence to it, right? And so, but in your 20s, your purpose is a little different than it is as you mature and you've had a few things go on in your life, right? So does that answer your question? Anybody else chime in on that? Agree, disagree?
I agree totally.
Okay. All right. So wherever you are now, going 10x from here will require a total remodeling of both yourself and your business, right? That was chapter 1, Dan Sullivan quote. Wherever you are now, right now in this moment, going 10x from here will require a total remodeling of both yourself and your business. So if you really want to go back to the first half of the book, that's what it's all about. Shedding your identity, thinking bigger, wanting what you want without having to defend it. I told you last week, all this kind of comes together, right? My visualization is this huge ball, and it's your 10x vision. And all these pieces that we've been talking about are encapsulated inside of that, right? So Luke, again, crazy. I didn't plant the question, but it's a great question to segue into that. Here's the problem. We get on these calls. You're reading the book. You're with somebody and you get inspired, or you're thinking bigger and you're like, absolutely, this is what I want. And then you walk out the door and your phone rings and a customer's upset with you, or family calls and somebody's on fire, right? Like life happens and we tend to fall into the gap, right? Because we're like, man, this is where I want to be. I want this, and I'm not there. I'm never going to get there. And we lose our energy. We lose our confidence. We fall into scarcity, right? Kind of a defense mechanism, or resigning ourselves to these things. Anybody been there? If we're honest, right? If you're not nodding, man, you're not being honest, right? Because this just, you ever had a day where, man, you were on fire, you were ready, and then it just became a big old, the technical term is crap show, right? You ever had one of these days? Right?
Yeah, sure.
I think mine is a little bit more vulgar than that, but yeah.
Well, this is PG. So
You're the Boy Scout. I remember.
We want to keep it cordial. All right. So those of you that have read the chapter, how again, this is a mental game as much as anything, right? So how do we deal with that?
This chapter hit me pretty hard, because literally right before I read it, I was just really overwhelmed, and I was complaining to Mike. I'm like, I just feel like I cannot get ahead. Like, this week has just been so hard. I have so much to do. I'm doing stuff, but I don't feel like I'm getting anything done. And then he just brings up a new idea. Like, he's excited. He brings up a new idea, and I'm just like, oh, and I know where he's at because I've been there excited with him, but just in the moment, I was just like, I don't know. I don't see it, babe. I just need a break. I need a break from everything. And then that evening we sat down and read this book together, and it was like a slap in the face. Also, I'll just my friend, she's getting her PhD in psychology, but I was talking to her and she struggles with the same thing of just always doing something and never feeling like she's getting anything done or really achieving anything. And she says she keeps a running notes of to-dos on her phone, and she's kept it since the beginning of the year. And so whenever she's feeling down or feeling like she hasn't accomplished anything, she goes through and she just scrolls through all of the checked off things. So I'm going to start that. So hopefully that'll help. But yeah, this one really spoke to me.
So that was part of what he talked about in the chapter, is looking back. It was really helpful.
Looking back and seeing where the dots connect and everything. Yeah. So this one,
where were you? Not old enough to, where were you 20 years ago, and what were you making, and who were you serving? Then that is an awesome exercise to do that and say, yeah, this is achievable.
Yeah.
You know that there's a point where you had zero income when you started out, and look where you are now. And so 10X is very possible when you look at it like that.
Yeah.
So the gap in the game, right? So the gap, who wants to take a shot at it? So, kind of Lexi, you kind of talked about it, but that's what the gap is, right? It's overwhelmed. I think we tend to get there, and chime in, let me know if you agree or disagree. But when I'm overwhelmed, tired, or hungry, I can fall into the gap, right? That so the question is, when you have those moments there's so much, I'm not going to be able, I can't do this, right? It's hard. And I always like those sayings. What's easy to do is also easy not to do. It's not hard. It's easy to do. It's just that it's easy not to do, right? And so we tend to get overwhelmed, tired, stressed out, whatever, hungry, and I don't know. That's when I find myself reflecting in the gap, right? Anybody else have a different experience?
I don't know that I would, am self-aware enough to know that, you know, I'm hungry, I'm tired or whatever. But I tend to think when I allow things to just go automatic, you know, and that's one of the dangers of having a self-managing law firm. I now know is that once it's self-managing, then it's kind of automatic. But I'm learning about myself. If I allow everything to be automatic, Simone stifles, I shut down. So I'm learning that. And something else, I don't know if other people have this issue, but the idea of busyness, there is value in busyness, you know, being in a world, in an environment where the more hours you build, the more valuable you are and all of that. To come to a place in my career where I'm not busy, I personally, you know, I think that I'm not contributing. I think that, you know, I am not being a good team player, you know, all of those horrible negative voices that say I have to be busy to have value. And learning past that, was good for me. Quit judging myself that I'm not busy. Use it as an opportunity to go into the game. So
Simone, to build on that, what you're saying and kind of bring us all back around, busy. So then you have to ask yourself, what am I busy with? Right? If I'm overwhelmed, what am I busy with? And you've got to revisit that 80-20. But Simone, what I see, and it kind of goes back to Luke's question, you're in a transformation. You've been successful. You've had the ability, the unique ability to transform your law firm into a self-managing company, which is ultimately the goal, because, you know, and we're going to get into that in future chapters, by the way, but your ability to have time, financial purpose, relationships evolve when you elevate yourself out of the technical, right?
Yes.
So you're going through, your unique ability is transforming and your next 10X is transforming. And so in that vacuum, you're like, you look around, you're like, I really don't have anything to do.
Yeah, and I feel guilty, you know.
Yeah.
I've been where Haven is, where there's, you know, so much to do, and being high performing and ability to multitask and all those things that used to have, you know, value to them are now absolutely the opposite. You don't want to be in that world. So it's, you're right. I'm in a transformation, but it is getting past the feeling guilty about, or whatever the should box, which this chapter talks about, you know, there's no should.
So let's talk about the gain. So how do we change? Because really all this is about how we change the internal dialogue with ourselves, right? And so the gap and the gain is a tool. It's actually a tool, and there's a book. Dan's got it. You can get it on Amazon or go to Strategic Coach, the gap and the gain. Ben talked about it in the chapter. But how do we switch that gap? How do we look at it differently? And we kind of hit on it a little bit, but what's the gain and why is that significant?
Well, I think this is right, because it's about looking at the past and seeing where you've 10x before. And then I kept thinking about wanting to go and somewhere in this book, or I think it talks about the feeling, the not being comfortable feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went back and I was thinking about business, about like when I was uncomfortable making a big decision that ultimately worked out. That was like and I remembered operating our business out of my garage and realizing like I had to have a space that was not my house to do this business, and how afraid I was at renting a rundown shopping center off of Classen for like $1,200 a month or something. Like I just remember like that fear, but it was the right decision. It was, you know, I was building the business, and I thought, man, you know, I haven't made a decision. I haven't done something like that in a while.
Right.
Where like I was that afraid to do the right thing. And I was like, I need to find more of more of those. Like that's what I need to be. That's 10x
Yeah.
because that literally was 10xing the business.
Right.
And I was like, if I could do it with 1,200, I could do it with 12,000 or 120,000, whatever it is.
How many agree with Ty?
I love it. I love it. But the
that's-
challenge, the being scared, and Ty, what you just said that really made me smile was forcing yourself to find that thing that's uncomfortable. Yeah, that speaks to me. So thank you for sharing that.
That's where the magic is, right? Because it goes back to, I mean, Dan's 4 C's concept. You know, it was a commitment, right? And courage, and then your capabilities grow and your confidence grows. And now you're like, oh, I got to do. Your biggest breakthroughs come in those uncomfortable moments when you're willing to go out on the edge a little bit. And you know, Kenny's with us. Kenny, hey, good to see you on the call. So, Kenny, if I remember right, you have 3 coffee shops now. You used to have 1, right? And I don't know if you're listening, but so you're mute. You may be in the back working out, but that's cool. You'll get the chance to hear us talk about you. But let's think about it, right? Lexi, same thing. 1 coffee shop, right? It's scary to think about changing what's working right now to go even bigger, right? And so. But if we look back, what's fascinating is if we look back, right? I used to joke, I think I made 22,000 my first year, 30 years ago in this business. And I'll tell you a secret, it went down 1/10 every month until I was all commission, right? Back then. And my wife still stayed married to me. I couldn't believe it. I don't think she understood, but she was bringing in more than me, right? And then what happens is all of a sudden you get to a point where you have enough business that, hey, this is easy, right? But it took a lot of sacrifice. I wasn't playing golf. I still don't play golf. I wasn't going to the bars like a lot of my friends. We were living in Dallas. They were going social hours all the time. I was hitting the phones back in the day when you did, and all of a sudden it transformed. So you think about that and you're like, wow, right? Like I had a vision for myself at a young age, like there was a goal there. But today, if you ask me, you know, what is that 10X? What's that vision? You build on, I can't believe I've gotten to be where I'm at. I've gotten to do some of the things I've done, the experiences I've had, the people I've gotten to meet. If you go back and you look at all those things, all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, I've accomplished so much. And, you know, and then you go to Ty and you're like, okay, I'm looking for the next uncomfortable thing, because you realize that's where the big X is, right? The 10X is in that next comfortable thing, and you have to change. Your unique ability might transform. You have to master something a little differently or new, right? All these things have to happen. And so I love that as we talk about it. Remember, the horizon is always moving. We're never going to reach the horizon. What do I mean by that? Mark, you're on mute.
Success is not a destination, but rather a journey, is what I got out of that.
You are always going to have something different, right?
The goalposts always move.
There you go. So that's why there's a fallacy in trying to measure where you are today against where you want to be, because that's going to change, right? But if we look back at, and I'd go so far as to go, Lexi, 10 years ago, were you married? Did you have a coffee shop?
No.
Did you have a little one at the house?
No.
Were you graduated from college? Right? Like you've experienced a ton in a short amount of time compared to where you were 10 years ago. Right? Yeah. So now it's time to get uncomfortable, and that shouldn't overwhelm you. That should make you a little nervous, but excite you.
Yeah. And for the most part, it does excite me. There's just a few moments where I do get stuck in the gap.
Yeah. Well, don't feel alone, because everyone on this call, whether they'll admit it or not, deals with that. You know what? my guess is almost daily, our natural progression slips us into the gap all the time, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay, but it's an awareness thing. If we're aware of it and go, look, I just need to keep measuring against where I was yesterday, where I was last month, last year, 10 years ago, right? It helps build the confidence, by the way. And because if we remember in the book, if you're a superstar and you're just moving, if you're just like, I'm working hard, you can burn. How many people know anyone that's been a superstar that burned out? Right? And I'm telling you, the work world is scattered with people that went in all in and burned themselves out, right? Because they kept thinking this is what success is. This is what, right? This is what I'm supposed to do. And the truth of it is, it was the wrong thing, and they weren't measuring back against the successes they've been having, right? And that leads, by the way, I think it leads to a lot of problems: alcohol, drugs, right? Like they're looking for something to help kind of stem what they're missing.
I think it leads to really poor decision making too in the business. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, Luke, it's a very good point. It's like you know, I think everybody on this call wants to be ethical, wants to do the right thing, but we all know businesses that don't, right? And I wonder if that tends to be because they're not measuring themselves correctly.
And they're probably not in their unique ability, like they're measuring themselves against other people. Like they haven't found their unique ability. They've just found other people's ability and done it better than them.
I like this. Comparison is the thief of joy.
It is, yeah.
Theodore Roosevelt.
Well, I'm curious, anybody else have a 10X when they think back, like where they've been and where they are today? Anybody else?
Yeah, I like to just say just 1 year ago today, we had zero recurring revenue. We had some revenue some one time. We had zero recurring revenue. And about close to 1 year ago today, I'm a tech guy. I grew up as software dev. 3 years ago, I cared about nerding out about coding, languages, building product. And that's all I was focused on. I could never really become a business, even though that's what I do. Today, I have problems even engaging on the coding. I'm like more excited talking about markets and strategy. But 1 year ago today, to get to where we're at, to get our biggest client, as a nerdy tech guy from Oklahoma, I put on a cheap suit, went to New York, and went to a big conference with a lot of aircraft manufacturers. And I sat at the table with the CEO of Embraer, one of the largest business jet manufacturers. And that was a scary experience, but I was terrified the entire time. I was way out of place. I was the only nerd there. All these like super wealthy businessmen and CEOs of these jet manufacturers. But what it did lead to is our biggest client to date that Form is right now kind of our pillar client. And on track this year, we're on track to hit almost $500,000 a year in recurring revenue. So we've gone from zero in the past 12 months, from zero to almost $500,000 a year. And it's because of doing things like that. I was absolutely terrified walking into that conference. But yeah, I think that's why I said when I'm in a transition, I feel like I'm in that 10X transition right now. I feel like I'm a very different person than I was just a year.
Well, hey, congratulations. That's 10X, right? So now the challenge, Luke, is what gets you nervous? What gets you, outside your comfort level? Where's that next 10X?
I'm constantly uncomfortable right now. How's that sound? There's not a point I'm not stressed and uncomfortable in doing something that I'm worried I'm going to completely screw up because I've never done it before. So, yeah.
So, by the way, that's Luke, another great point. As you look back, right? Anybody have any failures in their past? Right? And again, that's one of those, if you said no, you're not being honest. That's as much as part of your gap and gain as anything. As long as we learn from what we've done in the past. But that's, you know what? Some of us older, over 50 types will tell you the greatest thing that happens to you in life is when you have experience. right? Because we can have book knowledge all day long. What's the old saying? A formal education will make you a living. A continued real education will make you a fortune. And I think what's meant by that is when you butted your head against the wall a couple times, broken your nose, got a black eye, whatever, those are metaphors, then you start to gain some experience. You're like, maybe I shouldn't do that. Or, hey, I think I could have done this. And right. And that's what happens as you look back. But we all have them. We've all, like Luke, that meeting could have gone drastically different and been horrible, right? It didn't, but you would have taken something away from it.
And I'm telling you about the good one. Yeah, I've had horrible meetings. That was the one that worked out. So I'm only sharing the successes right now. Yeah.
There you go. Well, fantastic. Anybody else have anything to add, chime in on that? All right. Well, I want to point out a couple things that they talk about in the book as it pertains to gain. They call it the gain concept. And I just want to make sure that everybody saw this. It leads to greater happiness and positive. I'm sorry. Without my glasses, I can't read my own writing. Sorry about that. Leads to greater happiness and positive emotions. This contributes to the ability to have more creative thinking, right? Better decision making, higher performance, and self-determination. So the importance of gain isn't just to get you out of this little slump you might be feeling. It's to get the creative juices going again, right? Because that's what 10X is all about. You're wanting what you want is your time to think creatively. Confidence comes from your past successes. And I think that's another thing, right? Once you've had enough positive successes in your past, your confidence exudes. You don't worry so much about what people think, by the way, that judgment part that we all are worried about. And it just leads to that. So, and then I have a question for you on this, but I want to make this comment. Highly hopeful and motivated people continually take feedback from not achieving their goals to iterate or adjust their path forward. Agree, disagree?
Agree.
Because what happens when we don't do that, when we just keep trudging along? That history repeats itself, right? Or maybe it doesn't repeat.
That's when if you're not taking feedback from it, that's when you fail. If you just keep trudging along, that's when you fail.
Where will you stay in 2X? I'm sorry, Jeff. Yeah.
Thank you. Concise.
So my question, what are some of the questions that, this is an important part that I found in the book, and so I wrote it down. I want to make sure we cover it. If you agree on the gap in the gain that you got to acknowledge we all experience it. And if you realize that the way to focus, get yourself out of the gap and focus forward is to look back on your successes. But the real question is, when you're in those moments, what are some of the questions that you ask yourself?
One of the things that, like 2 or 3 years ago, Ty proposed a question to me, and honestly, I was incredibly pissed off when he said it, was that going through employee struggles and things like that, or something happens to us, and often you get into this like victim mentality of like, the world did this to me, or it's not my fault. And he turned the question around and he's like, it's specifically related to employees. It's like, when you break it down, how did we fail? It's like, well, no, they were being an idiot on site, or they did something wrong. It's all their fault. And when you rephrase all of those questions to say, how is it my fault? Well, did I hire them? Did I not properly vet them during the interview? Did I not train them well enough? Did I not provide continuing education? And when you start looking at those, you realize that as a business owner, no matter what, it's your fault. And how do you get better from there? Because you didn't support them in some way that provided for their success. And so just constantly reframing and being okay with the fact that it's my fault and I'm going to learn from it.
Well, I always like that thought process because I can do something about the things that are my fault. I can't do anything about the things that are somebody else's fault or what's going on in the political world or the economic world. I can't fix any of that, but I can fix the things that I did. So it gives me peace to think like that. I know when I do that to people who aren't used to it, they get super frustrated with me because like, oh, it's not my fault. I'm like, well, yeah, no, not technically, but yeah, but it is our fault.
Well, now we're getting into some Jocko Willink and that David Goggins stuff, right? Like ultimate responsibility is you. And I would just say this. I think what I wonder about, I just think about these things. Being a real entrepreneur, being a true business owner is complete ownership. There is nobody else. It's a big responsibility, right? And it isn't victimhood. It is learning. It is, hey, that's gap, right? It's not my fault. That's gap thinking. Gain thinking is just what these guys talked about, right? And it requires leadership. So if you're going to be this entrepreneur, if you're going to 10X, if you're working in your unique ability, you either better hire somebody to lead your company if that's not your unique ability or you're not up for it, or you better master leadership, right? And by you, I mean all of us, right? It's something that requires that in this whole ballgame. Some of the questions I want to share with you because I want to make sure these are the questions again that maybe help you reflect on the gain when you're trying to get out of the gap or just need a boost in that confidence, right? That you're headed the right way and you're thinking about things. How have you grown as a person over the past 3 years? And I'm going to tell you, that's been exponential for me, right? And I imagine, especially coming out of COVID and all this other stuff that we can't be accountable for, but how we reacted, how we responded in that moment says a lot. Says a lot that you're still here, says a lot that you're thriving, says a lot. What are the biggest things you've learned in the past 12 months? That's a good question, right? Luke, I got to assume this last 12 months you've learned a ton.
There's been some of the highest growth part, probably the highest growth part of my life. Yeah. The past 12, 24 months.
The other thing is now in the book, they say name 10 important things that you've accomplished over the last 12 months. But you know what? Don't put a burden of yourself for 10. Can you name 3? Can you name 1? Right? Because if you're like, oh my gosh, I only got 8.5. I'm a failure. Well, don't put a number on it. But you've accomplished something. And then lastly, and there's more in the book, so go back and look at the book towards the end of the chapter 4. But what meaningful experiences have you had in the last 90 days? Right? Those are just some good questions as you're looking back and connecting the dots, right? Okay, so we're about 15 minutes, actually less than 15 minutes. There's 2 big things I want to make sure we also hit, and we can come back to this next week if we need to, but shifting gears a little bit, I think we all understand the gap in the gain and how to work through that. What I want to know is who can tell me what fitness function is?
Fitness function is when you look at your ultimate goal, It's like examining the your ability to actually meet that goal. It's your fitness to get there.
Good. So in the book, the analogy is point yourself in the direction and the destination of an airplane, right? Like if I know I want to go to, I want to go to France. Don't know that I would, but if I wanted to go to France, I better point myself in that direction. I better make sure that I'm directed and I have the flight plan to get me there, right? So kind of that's what fitness function is. So if I'm trying to build a franchise, right, and my goal, my 10x, my vision's this, what is that fitness function there? Because what happens, Jeff, by the way, what happens to that airplane as while it's en route to France?
Things happen, wind, all sorts of stuff happens. They got to constantly reevaluate.
And the reason for that is if we're off one degree over the course of the flight, we can tend to get off the flight plan, right? Off the direction.
But you will get somewhere.
Yes. Tijuana. No. Who knows, right? But I think it's interesting to understand the concept of fitness function from the standpoint of a tool. When you look at what you're trying to accomplish, we've talked about delegation. We've talked about your 20%. We've talked about who you need. But the reality is, if you can visualize a path here, and to Jeff hit on it, evaluating, right? Like continually evaluating, where's my fitness function? Where am I? Am I on course? What adjustments do I need to be making? And again, it's not what adjustments do I need to be making. It's who do I need, right? Is this something I need to happen? Do I delegate it out? Who do I need? What capabilities do I need? What do I have to learn? And am I still committed, right? Am I committed? Am I growing my capabilities, right? You get through the 4 C's, like all this on this fitness function. So the question that I wrote down is this your 10x vision? Is your 10x vision your wants wrapped in the mastery journey? Is could you go so far as to go your fitness function is really your mastery journey? Because Jeff gets halfway to France and he goes, you know what, honey, I don't want to go to France anymore. Let's go. And I say Hawaii. I don't know if you want to go there right now, but maybe I want to change course, right? So now my mastery has to change. My 10x has changed. What I want has changed. Do you think that's possible that happens?
Yeah, that happens.
So the question on that is, again, you should be thinking, when you think about fitness function, to me, what are we shedding? What identity are we shedding? What tasks are we shedding? What are your new standards? Right? So if you want to get somewhere 10x, somewhere new, what are your new standards? We have to, like I talked about this morning, what you realize is your sleep, your nutrition, your personal all impacts, but the people you surround yourself with, right? What you're willing to tolerate, for lack of a better word, right? What you know you need to move away from becomes vital with those standards and those disciplines, right? Like David Goggins. How many of you know the David Goggins story? Right? I think he's like 400 pounds. He's spraying insects, pet control, and he decides, man, this ain't it. So he goes through 3 Navy SEALs training, BUDS, I think 3 times, but he can't get in until he drops like some crazy amount of weight. And so he does it. And now today, this guy has developed, he really shedded his old identity. And today he's like one of the strongest mental minds you will ever meet. A little scary, right? But but he went through, think of the transformation, the 10X that he's had and what he's mastered, right? And now he's speaking, writing books, doing things that I got to think, you know, going back when he started, all he really said was, this isn't the lifestyle I want to live, right? And hey, this Navy SEALs thing, this BUDS thing is for me. And then he did that, right? And then he got into doing ultra marathons and ultra stuff and just crazy stuff. Now he's a speaker, he's an author. Think of all the transformations that he had to master, and he's still going, right? And that's his fitness function. Along the way, I'm sure he had to navigate, change course, shed some new things, master some new things, commit to some other things, right? And the capabilities and the confidence, it's just a never-ending cycle. So your new standards, and is it your truest self, right? Like if you got anything out of chapter 4, it's really all this culminates with you being your truest self. Not what anyone on this call thinks you should do, not what your family thinks your truest self, but what you know inside of you is your truest self. Again, none of it matters, right? At the end of the day. So let's just be who we are. Let's let those unique abilities manifest and do those things. So anyway, comments, questions? All right, so we got like 5-6 minutes. I'm gonna jump into this next one. Who could tell me about their dream check? So my question was, one of the dream check, if you hadn't read that, actually it's a great one to listen to on the audiobook, but Jim Carrey wrote himself a check for what, $10 million, $12 million? And he dated it, didn't he? Now that's kind of crazy, but he got that amount of money, right? And it's not just about the money, but when I used to joke when I started, I'll tell you a little secret. 30 years ago, a blue-collar kid from a split family, no money, man, somebody handed me $100,000 check. That was unbelievable, unbelievable. Today, $10 million is a nice check, right? So I'm just curious, what kind of value do we need? I think that's the big thing is, okay, what's your biggest check you've ever gotten, and how would you 10X that? Right? Like if you 10X that, and it could be, hey, maybe you've been paid $10,000. Well, that's $100,000 would be like, that would be huge, right? That'd be transformational. Or $1 million or $10 million. But the question is, what value would you need to provide to be able to ask for that check, right? Because again, it's ultimate responsibility. And that goes into, who do you want to be a hero to? Because the biggest way to zero, the fastest way to zero is trying to be heroes to everybody. Understand what I'm saying? When we try to please everybody, we're going to be on the losing end. So what's that dream check? And what does it require from me? And who is it that we want to be a hero to? So anybody want to throw out what a dream check would look like?
Why did so you got me thinking about the hero part, actually, because I was thinking about you know, what does my 10X life look like, right? And a lot of it is sort of like hero to myself type of goals, and which is not what is not. If you want to be a hero to yourself, well, I don't think that's going to get you to 10X. So my dream check was, I just basically looked at my annual income and then 10X it, and I was like, okay, well, what kind of value do I need to provide to get to that kind of annual income? And then I went right back into 2X mindset. Well, I just need to get 10X as many clients as I have now. So it just means I just need to buckle down and you know, and onboard clients at a faster clip. But then I was starting to think, well, maybe there's something else. Like maybe it's not clients, maybe it's something else. And that gets back to that hero piece. Like, well, who am I a hero to? And right now my business is basically kind of designed to be kind of a hero to everybody. So yeah, that was just the thoughts I had on that, Rick. I'm sorry if that was off.
No, yeah, that's great, because what you're sharing is, look, the greatest route to no time, no relationships, right, is trying to 2x your way to bigger checks. Instead, what we have to do is think about how we could. So those of you that were in one of my workshops, I don't know if you remember this, but we went through an exercise that I love. And what we did is we had you write down your top 10 revenue clients, right? And that became, we did an average or a median of what that group represented in revenue. And we said, that's your minimum check, right? So if you did that today, if you went to your top 10 clients revenue wise, and you said, I am not accepting a client that doesn't fit that, at least that minimum check, then you have to ask yourself, well, what do I have to do to be valuable to that buyer, right? But back to that, you can't be selling, you have to be buying. So see how it changes the thought process and the action that you have to have, completely different than going, I just need to 10x the number of people I'm serving, right? Because I think we could all agree trying to do that is not going to make you very happy. Agree, disagree?
Yeah, man, Rick, I really appreciate that statement. I can't be the one selling, I need to be the one buying. And in franchise, we're constantly told that we're awarding, we're not selling franchises, but I still get on the phone and I start selling. And I need to really, one, understand my value, up our value, and get to the place where we're buying the candidate, the person who wants to franchise with us. Now, I'm not trying to sell. I'm deciding whether or not we want to accept them into our franchise system to help us grow. And so that's a really key thing for me to latch onto.
Yeah. Anybody else? So I'll just kind of wrap this whole thing up with, I think this is important to think about your dream check, because it's not, if you're thinking money, financial solely, you're thinking the wrong way, right? Because it has to transform what your organization looks like. It has to transform how we're doing things, right? And who's on board in this. But recently I had somebody come across and they were like, look, I want to, I've come into some money. I want to give you a couple million, and then I want to give this other person a couple million. And, early on in my career, I'd been like, yeah, whatever, just give me an opportunity. You're going to love me. And then all that money will come over. But what you realize once you've done that a few times is it never ends well, because what happens is you're judged purely on a short-term, nothing more than performance, nothing, right? Because that's all they're looking. And it's not in the best interest of the people you serve and want to be a hero to, right? Like, I want to be a hero to the people that I serve. And so I told him, I said, you know what? I don't think that, I said, you're going to have complexity that you don't need. You're going to have risk that you don't need. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm more than happy to be here and work with you, but I would rather you take all of it over to the other person than split it between the two of us. Okay. And your willingness to walk away. I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's good revenue, right? And if you're only doing it for the revenue, it's a short-term fix. And if you're trying to 10X and trying to look at this thing over the next 25 years, you got to be willing to, there's a standard there, guys. There's a standard, right? So anyway, so I leave you kind of with that thought in mind as we wrap up. We are over the time, so I don't want to just cut us off. What I want you to, what I really want to do is throw something out, and next session, I'm going to make time for it. But I want you to think about what you're struggling with right now. And I think it'd be good, as this group has now been through 4 chapters, for us to be able to kind of hot seat somebody that's willing to go, look, I'm challenged by this right now, either as a business owner or in my business or whatever. And I'd love to just get us on the call to kind of do that next week. So think about like what, as you're thinking this week through, and you're thinking about the gap in the gain, and you're thinking about your fitness function and the dream check, and just thinking back on where we've been so far in this chapter, what is it that you're struggling with? Okay. And you can email it to me and I can bring it out to the group anonymously, like the topic this week, or if you're willing to have us, put you on the hot seat, we'll do that. Chapter 5 is going to be really interesting because this is a hard one, because this is starting to navigate not only wanting what you want, but how to manage freedom. Okay. And by the way, the funny thing is when you figure this out, you see a jump in your productivity, your focus, and other things. So I'm going to be interested. Make sure you hit chapter 5 and come in next week for that chapter. I appreciate you guys being on the call. Anybody got a comment or anything they'd like to say before we wrap up here? All right. Well, it's 9:04, so we went a little longer. I apologize for that, but hopefully it's been good. We continue to get people signed up and people watching the videos on YouTube. So somebody's enjoying this. I thank you. Have a great, productive week, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.